Good afternoon again. It's been a long day, but it's one of the highlights of the annual meeting of the American Glaucoma Society is the annual AGS Lecture. This year, the 19th AGS Lecture will be given by Dr. Robert Weinreb of San Diego. Today, Bob joins a long list of important people in our field who have been privileged to give this lecture in honor of the AGS honoree. Today, Bob is giving that lecture in honor of Paul Kaufman. A little bit about Bob. Bob received his undergraduate degrees from Harvard College and a degree also in electrical engineering from MIT. He went on to Harvard Medical School and did his ophthalmology residency at UCSF. He also did his fellowship there before moving to UCSD, just up the road in La Jolla, in 1979, where he joined the faculty and has remained to the present day. He rose quickly through the academic ranks and is currently Distinguished Professor of Ophthalmology at UCSD and is founder and director of the Hamilton Glaucoma Center. The Hamilton Glaucoma Center, and many of you have visited, actually is quite nice. It consists of 24,000 square feet. They currently have 5 ophthalmologists, 11 PhDs, 10 postdocs. He's raised over $24 million for glaucoma research, construction, and endowment at his institution. He's had continuous NIH funding since 1979. When I received his CV before I prepared this presentation, it was rather large. Bob has over 750 peer-reviewed publications and has given over 67 named lectureships. He's on 26 editorial boards. Importantly for us, he's co-editor of Journal of Glaucoma. He began AGSNet and GlaucomaNet, and AGSNet is a critical component, I think, of the American Glaucoma Society and allows us to communicate as easily as we do. He serves on over 40 federal nonprofit and scientific advisory boards and has trained over 100 fellows, about half of whom are full-time faculty at institutions around the world. You know, Bob is and his team here in San Diego are well known. He's worked for a long time with people like Pam Sample, Linda Zangel, Jamie Lindsay, Felipe Medeiros, Chris Bowd, Lynn Racette. And those people are familiar to us because they present very often at our meetings. But there are a couple of other things that I dug out of his CV that are not quite as well known, perhaps. Bob began early work doing human trabecular meshwork cell culture with John Polanski, Dr. Alvarado in the late 1970s as a resident. He's also cultured human ciliary muscle cells. He has a laboratory working along with Jamie Lindsay on with transgenic mice and developed a model for primary open-angle glaucoma. And as I mentioned in my previous talk, a blue light CSLO, retinal ganglion cell imaging in vivo. We're all familiar with his work developing the confocal scanning laser ophthalmoscope and the polarimeter, which we use today in clinical practice. Bob's also been active in the field of pharmacology, as you see, more recently involved in molecular mechanisms of prostaglandin analogs and iris pigmentation with Jamie Lindsay. Bob served the American Glaucoma Society as president, immediate past president, and has had continuous service on the board of directors since 1993. And that's a lot of meetings and a lot of hours. He gave the first clinician scientist lecture in 2000. Some of the key initiatives that he's been responsible for at the American Glaucoma Society are Advocacy Day, the Physician Scientist Mentoring Program, and he expanded the AGS research grants. And actually, we've given away something like $1 million, and Bob's been instrumental in that. Bob served as on the board of ARVO and as its president. He also served as president of the World Glaucoma Association and was one of its founders. He continues to chair the consensus initiative that's held at ARVO each year. You know, I think there are two things about Bob that are important, that he appreciates the most, really, and that's his ability to interact with many of us over his long career, and many of us have collaborated with him on past papers. I think he views that as a very special part of his work. The other is the fellows that he's trained, many of whom are here in the audience, and many of whom are around the world. They constitute a good number of people who are accomplishing a lot for our field. Bob likes to visit his fellows and his colleagues all around the world. Here's a picture of Bob and Professor Kitazawa as the last samurai, perhaps as extras in the movie. I wasn't there. And here's our Bob at Mardi Gras in Rio. And we're not going to ask what happened afterwards. As I mentioned, Bob enjoys visiting with former fellows no matter where they are. Here they are, some of them at a meeting in Cairns, Australia. Bob's also an avid sportsman and has completed something like 35 marathons. And, you know, when someone from New York visits the West Coast, you know, in New York we don't exercise, we don't believe in that. But out here, here we are in Portland, Oregon, at a meeting of Jack Chaffee's and Steve Mansberger's, and they said, why don't we go for a bike ride? And they didn't tell me it was mountain biking. And of course, Bob was highly competitive and probably won that race. Here's a picture of Bob with a lot of our current and former leaders after a grueling day dueling it out at a board meeting that usually lasts 5, 6, 7, or 8 hours at a clip. Bob's very close with our honoree. Some would say maybe too close, but very close to Paul Kaufman. And I'm sure you know it's an honor for Bob to give this lecture in honor of Paul. With that, I give you our 19th AGS lecturer, Bob Weinreb.
Well, thanks, Jeff, for the generous introduction, and thank you all for the honor of delivering this lecture. I'm here to talk about getting from here to there in glaucoma and what is next, and describe the journey and where we're going and how we might be getting there. Build a better mousetrap, and the world will be the path to your door. Many of us, when we begin our careers, we think that it's quite easy to make progress, and making progress in glaucoma is not that easy. We all recognize the keyboards. Most of us, probably all of us, are most familiar with the one on top, the QWERTY keyboard. It was designed in the late 19th century, and it was designed in order to avoid the keys from striking each other and getting stuck, because the typewriters at that time had metal keys that were very close together. A number of years later, someone looked at the efficiency of typing and came up with another keyboard that in fact would increase typing efficiency 30 to 40%. But how many of us are familiar with the bottom keyboard? Very few.